Black Bag reminds me a lot of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Do you remember that movie? It came out over a decade ago, but I'm sure some of you recall it. And if you're a film Twitter type, you're probably like, ooh, tickets sold. And that's great. Now, I did not like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. In fact, I disliked it quite a bit. But I have to say, with this movie, there are some things that I did enjoy and that I actually admire. So let's discuss. Now, both movies are very intellectual spy thrillers. Elegantly British. Ooh, so elegant. This is even more elegant. This is sometimes almost like a catalog more than a movie. You're like, ooh, where'd you get that? Where's that from? Cate Blanchett, you look so amazing. An all-star cast on that note. But both movies, I think, also only appreciated by a few. I'm very curious to see what the audience scores are going to be for Black Bag. By the way, there was no cinema score for Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy because it never went into full wide release, which kind of gives you an idea of how it did. Yes, it did not do well in theaters. It came out in 2011, but it was only made for $21 million, so they really minimized their risk on that. And it was based on a John le Carré novel, who of course has a lot of cachet, and was therefore nominated for a bunch of awards, and it won like 3 BAFTAs, including Outstanding British Film, because it was very, 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 very British. Black Bag's problem, though, is that while at its heart, it's an intellectual spy thriller, it's in commercial packaging. This movie was made for $50 million, and I was like, well, with inflation, is that the same? Looked it up. It's not. 21 million with today's dollars is a little under 30 million, so they still spent too much money on this movie, like almost like they're 20 million over on what they should have spent on it. If this movie had like a little under $30 million budget, I think maybe it would be in a lot better shape. At the very end of the movie, I realized what they were trying to do. I was like, wait a minute. Are you trying to do a modern spy version of Nick and Nora Charles with Michael Fassbender and Cate Blanchett looking so fab? What a great idea. Too bad they didn't do it. I mean, it was so frustrating because I was like, oh, that would be wonderful. And I didn't even realize that's what they were trying to do until, again, the last scene of the movie. I'm sure someone will be like, I realized it immediately. Well, good for you. But I think they didn't do a good job. Also, it's written by David Koepp, the complete opposite of John le Carré. I mean, he has absolutely no intellectual cachet in Hollywood whatsoever. In fact, I think he's a strike against the movie for most people who would be awards voters. And Steven Soderbergh, who has been an awards darling historically, well, these days he's just kind of playing around. So I don't think people are taking him as seriously. So couple all that with a March release. I mean, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, it was such an awards movie. It came out in limited release in December and then didn't go wide until January. And in fact, never even hit 1,000 theaters. I mean, it didn't need to. It did what it needed to do to get those nominations, but it just wasn't a commercial movie. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy didn't want to be a commercial movie. But the problem is that Black Bag does, or at least Focus Features wants it to be. And on that note, I don't see Focus Features running an awards campaign for this film. It would be a total waste of money. All right, so that's the business angle. What about the movie itself? All right, so I didn't like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, as I said. In fact, I disliked it so much that I don't even remember it or why I disliked it. I just remember really disliking it. But I bring it up here, not just for the business Hollywood comparison, but also because if you really like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and we're like, damn, that's good cinema, then you'll probably really, really like this movie just even with its flaws. So I think that's a good comparison, you know. And also I think it would inform whether or not you think it would be worth seeing in theaters. I mean, it's a gorgeous movie. Now, unlike with Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, I can see why Black Bag has, so far, we'll see if the score drops as more reviewers see it. I'm really on the edge if I want to give it a fresh or a Rotten Tomato. I think I'm going to go Rotten because it is very boring in a lot of parts. And they drop the ball on so many elements. But it's a reluctant Rotten Tomato. Again, if only there was a third option in the middle. But I can understand why it's getting a lot of freshies. It has the skeleton of a great movie. But unfortunately, Soderbergh and Koepp have neglected to put any meat on those bones. That's the note I would have given them if I had just read this, if I had seen it. I guess by the time they filmed it, it's too late. You're like, I'm not spending any more money on this. Darn it, I wish we'd talked a little bit more before cameras had rolled. Also, here's a big problem. This could have been fixed in the editing room, maybe with a little bit of reshoots. So the first big scene in the film, in the first act, is a dinner party. Ooh, sounds good. It's not. It's so boring and so dense and so long. I was gripped with fear that this would be the entire movie because it seemed to be a dinner party that never ended. I was like, is this just basically a play? The trailer made me feel that this was an action-packed thriller. Because yes, the trailer for the film was very exciting. It was one of the movies. And look at this poster. That doesn't say just a dinner party. So I was really nervous. Yes, the pacing of Black Bag is a real problem. I think the idea is that this is what spy work is really like. They're like, oh, it's so realistic. It's really just a desk job with a lot of lying. And even to your fellow spies. But that's not fun to watch. Unless they turn it into a comedy like The Office. The movie is also about relationships in the spy game. MI6 has an in-house psychiatrist, which is actually a big part of this film, but clearly no human resources department, which they desperately need as dating is apparently rampant within the office. Whew! If your attention, but back to the pacing, if your attention wavers at all watching this film, and it's very likely to because you're going to get bored, for sure. But if you don't have laser focus, you're going to miss an important piece of information. And a lot of it is so subtle, like you could miss it. Even if you were watching it, you have to be like, oh my God, you really have to pay attention. And if you miss anything, because it's a mystery that's very closely intertwined, you're going to start to become lost and you're not going to be able to keep up with the story. But I kind of liked the mystery. So yes, darn it, I found myself intrigued. Also, again, the movie is just so stylish and sexy with an excellent score by David Holmes. I got that score, by the way. I liked it so much. I have Apple Music, so I don't have to pay extra. It's, it's a subscription service, but I'm looking forward to listening to it again. David Holmes did a lot of heavy lifting here. So I thought there must be something here. I was like, although Michael Fassbender and Cate Blanchett have made a lot of kind of movies like this, come to think of it, this isn't nearly as good as Nightmare Alley. Although some people didn't like Nightmare Alley. I love Nightmare Alley so much. With Cate Blanchett. All right, so anyway, I was like, there has to be something here. And there kind of is. There kind of is. If you pay, as I said, very close attention to this movie, you will be rewarded. I think so. I was like, that's a pretty good mystery. Too bad it's buried in boredom. As I said, this movie has excellent bones. And if they just put some meat on them, you would have, I think, have had the British spy version of Soderbergh's Ocean's 11. I really do. I think it had that kind of potential. And I bet that's how Soderbergh and Koepp pitched this to Universal's Focus Features. Or maybe they didn't pitch it that way, but maybe that's an assumption that Universal's Focus Features made. And maybe they should have clarified that again before cameras rolled. They should have been like, not what I thought I ordered. Oh well, but I guess I should have realized when I hired Steven Soderbergh and David Koepp. With both those guys, it can really go either way. I particularly, though, liked the metaphor of fishing for Fassbender's George hunting down rogue spies. I'm not going to give away any of the dialogue or action because it's not a lot. The scenes they're far and few between, but it was just so clever as a metaphor. I was really impressed. I was like, oh, that's so smooth. Nice job, Koepp. But then, while you have really smart elements like that to the script, there's also really stupid stuff in it. Like, I'm not going to give you a spoiler, don't worry. But there's a big moment at the end of the movie, right? And the villain makes a really dumb mistake that took me out of the movie. These are all professional spies in the film. So how could someone fall for something like that? It was ridiculous. It was really dumb. Don't spoil it down below if you see the movie, because, it's the ending. Although, as I said, David Koepp is no stranger to bad and sloppy writing. Just take a look. So bad. All right, by the way, Soderbergh and Koepp just released another film a few weeks ago. And well, they're on some kind of roll together. I'm like, what exactly are you guys doing here? They're like burning our careers to the ground. This movie isn't that bad. But it's frustrating. But as a Soderbergh film, again, as I said, the film is obviously gorgeous. From the cinematography to the sets, and it's just beautiful. The film also has a really great opening at a London club where it leads you to think it's going to be a very much different movie than it is. You're like, oh, this is great. And then you're like, oh, all right. And as always, Soderbergh is able to assemble one heck of a cast. So Michael Fassbender, wow. I might have been swayed by the fact that he's wearing my glasses in this movie. But he's just oozing movie star. But on that note, to be fair, Fassbender has never really been able to sell movie tickets by himself. He's very valuable in an ensemble. This is kind of an ensemble, actually. But, we loved his Magneto. We love his David, right? We're like, come back. And also, by the way, recently he was in Next Goal Wins. That's actually a really good movie that he's amazing in, although it was a total flop. Fassbender's got a lot of flops. And I suspect this might be another one. But he's just so good here. He's peak Fassy. If you're a Michael Fassbender fan, you will be able to watch this movie. I was like, damn, he's so good. And who's Cate Blanchett's stylist? She is always looking great, but I've never seen her look as good as she does in this movie. Wow. She looks so posh. It was amazing. But it's not just the clothes, hair, and makeup, because remember, I'm sure most of us never forgot, Cate Blanchett is an actress. She swayed my entire Borderlands review. But she also is very elegant in her actions and her movement. She's almost like a dancer, like a lethal one. It's amazing. She's like living silk. It was a very good performance. Again, her and Michael Fassbender as a modern spy version of Nick and Nora Charles is just such a good idea that it's frustrating that Soderbergh and Koepp dropped the ball on that. Although, as some of you are probably pointing out, that might not have ever been their intention. But what a missed opportunity. Now, how about the rest of the cast? So Rege-Jean Page is in this movie, and he has a lot of fans thanks to Bridgerton. And in fact, many of those fans are campaigning hard for him to be the next James Bond. It's been a long campaign at this point. They're still going strong. And even Michael Fassbender has joined the crusade. And he pointed out recently that he was the one who recommended Daniel Craig for the job back in the day when they were both auditioning. He's like, why did I do that? But he's like, I am good at picking Bonds. I don't know about that, Fassy. I didn't watch Bridgerton, but I have seen Rege-Jean Page in a number of other things at this point. And while he's a good actor and very dashing for sure, just to me, he doesn't seem to have lead character energy. Naomi Harris, who was in the Bond franchise, does a very nice job here. But unfortunately, her role is more grounded. She has some interesting aspects to her character, like a strong moral core, which is very difficult to have in the spy game. But they never really go into it. They never really explore it. Again, as I said, no meat on the bones in this movie. As for Tom Burke, I loved this guy in Furiosa. I was like, where'd you come from? Hello. And he more than holds his own here. But I think, especially with the beard, he comes across as Nick Offerman light. I mean, maybe he always does, right? I was like, oh yeah, if Nick Offerman shaved, I bet he would look a lot like Tom Burke did in Furiosa. But yeah. I just feel he's really basically, I'm like, maybe we should have just hired Nick Offerman. Although Nick Offerman these days is very busy, thanks to The Last of Us. But Burke, I don't know. He just sort of blends into the movie. Some guys wear a beard very well. I didn't really love it on Burke. Pierce Brosnan is also here. Also a Bond. They have all this Bond energy, but there's nothing like a James Bond movie. I mean, Amazon. I would show this to Amazon and be like, be careful you don't do this. So Pierce Brosnan's here, hardly at all, almost more of a cameo. I don't know why he's on the poster. I know why, because he's a name and they paid him for a reason, but he should be much smaller on the poster. But at least he's used very effectively. The supporting cast member who makes the biggest impression is actually newcomer Marissa Abella, who I'd never heard of before. But I looked her up because she made a big impression, and it turns out she's from HBO's Industry, like David Johnson. They're working with quite the talent pool over there. I can see why so many of you have been recommending it to me. I got a lot of stuff to watch. So does everybody. And I think its fan base is growing, but it's not a huge show. However, now that they're 2 for 2, if I were a producer, a director, or a casting director, I'd start to look there. I'd be like, wow, there seems to be amazing talent over in that show. Let's go over there and see who we might be able to take out of there. Because she's just great. She's almost, actually come to think of it, they're very different movies, but she's almost as good in this as David Johnson is in the latest Alien movie. And by the way, she also played Amy Winehouse in Back to Black, which some of you might hold against her. I think people reacted very poorly to that movie, right? But anyway, here she's in Black Bag. And she does a fantastic job. She's fantastic. She's not only able to hold her own opposite seasoned pros like Michael Fassbender and Cate Blanchett, but actually compete with them and give a little pushback acting-wise. You're like, ooh, saucy. But that's, to be fair to the other actors, she has a very saucy role. She has the juiciest supporting role. And as I said earlier in this review, the trailer for Black Bag made it seem like it was a much more exciting movie than it actually is. So the reason I bring that up, again, is that before the movie started, they sure played a lot of trailers. They got to cut it back. I think it was like 30 trailers. I think it was like 30 minutes of trailers and ads. It was just, now the point I want to make is that the trailers were very exciting. They were good. Some of them I hadn't seen before, like the trailer for The Shroud. So I was like, and the Life of Chuck trailer, well, that's more of a teaser, but that just came out. And I was like, ooh, and they showed The Amateur again. And I was like, wow, there's some really good thrillers coming out. This is exciting. This is exciting for the theatrical business. But then after I was done watching Black Bag, and it was such a disappointment compared to the trailer, it kind of made me despondent again about, the current state of moviegoing. And I went back to my theory from Movie Math on Sunday, in that the content can no longer drive whether or not you go to the theater, and it's more really a matter of habit and circumstances. Like either you just like going, so you'll see whatever comes out, which is a group that's getting smaller and smaller these days, especially, some of you point out, due to the economy. AMC A-List, I think, is very helpful with that. But then also circumstance, like, oh, it's a holiday or something like that. But it ain't a holiday right now. Maybe for some of you it's spring break, although I think it's still a little bit early. But yeah, I mean, if Hollywood keeps disappointing moviegoers, how do they think they're going to keep getting them to go back to the theater? I mean, because I'll just tell you, like, if I didn't love going to the movies so much and this wasn't my job as a reviewer, like before Black Bag, I was like, man, movies are back. I want to see all these in theaters. And I would recommend that everybody see them all in theaters. But then after Black Bag, I was like, maybe these are all streaming movies. So it was tough. I know some of you are like, don't you want movies to do well? The theater business to do well? Well, I don't think propping up subpar movies is the way to do it. I think, and there's just so much content at home that is unfortunately, well, Severance, let's see how Severance wraps up, season 2. But this is, even if they're like around the same, the price point for the streaming service is lower. And so you'll just wait to stream or get Black Bag at a lower price point down the line. All right, so that's my review of Black Bag, which is starting out in theaters before other options right now. All right, so share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and you can also watch some more videos right now.